Welcome to the Global Black Economic Forum. Please welcome your host, political commentator, social impact leader, and author, Aaliyah Johnson.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. I'm the daughter of a pastor, so I like a little call and response. How y'all doing? I know it's hot, but how y'all doing? Y'all look good. We made it here. We're in a beautiful space. I'm honored to be back here as your host again for the third, give it up, the third Global Black Economic Forum's Access and Economic Opportunity Summit. Listen, at this moment, politically and culturally, the work of this organization and this convening is more important than ever. Every year, we bring together business leaders, philanthropists, culture creators, policy leaders, venture capitalists, and more to address some of the most pressing needs of the Black diaspora. When we first convened in 2023, we came right as the US Supreme Court dismantled affirmative action. A year after, the Dobbs decision overturned abortion access in this country. And then the following year, last year, we gathered amid kind of a chaotic presidential election, watching that same court set the stage for unprecedented and unchecked executive power. And now in 2025, we are living in the consequences of that. These are deeply precarious times. Immigrants are being disappeared, and a cruel, right now literally, a cruel, evil, sinister bill is being voted on in Congress. That would strip away healthcare for nearly 17 million people. And we know that for Black Americans, that would be devastating and disproportionately impact us. I know times may seem dark, but I want to pause there and thank our Congressional Black Caucus members and encourage them with our round of applause. For holding the line and reminding us of what's at stake. And shout out to another live stream, The State of the People, that has been going, that's right, that's been going for more than 65 hours to talk to our community about what's happening and also prepare us for action. And so as we talk about the future of health today, let us remind ourselves that gutting the healthcare system isn't just about insurance. This will close hospitals and care providers all over the country. And we know that we can't build our wealth without our health. The future of our workforce is threatened. Women's rights are being rolled back. The US has become a militarized state. And abroad, the ripple effects have been felt. From our relationships with the nations of our brothers and sisters, the disrespect to our Black global leadership, our autonomy and our brilliance, to rolling back the progress that we've started to make together, there is clearly so much work to do, especially as we know that the threat to global democracy impacts our economic opportunity, equity, and it impacts our future. And for Black people across the diaspora, our ability to build wealth, access care, and live safely is directly tied to the state of democracy, policy, and power. So I recently wrote a best-selling book. Flip the Tables, the Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change to actually help us navigate through these moments. Navigating ourselves, navigating our vision, and navigating our communities. It addresses how we continue to show up authentically and courageously in our excellence, disrupting the status quo in small, yet courageous and impactful ways. It reminds us that each of us has a role to play and that no role is too small. And the reality is, if millions of us take daily courageous acts of courage to impact the world around us, we don't have to sit back and wait for one leader on a pedestal with the platform. We are the leaders that we have been waiting for. And that's why we're here, to figure out the action that we need to take, to move the work forward together. So this year's summit will tackle what's at stake and what's possible across some of the most critical areas: the future of work, wealth, health, and democracy. Each of you is here for a reason. because of your influence across healthcare, business, tech, culture, advocacy, and innovation. You are the disruptors and the change makers and the builders. And our challenge today isn't just to name the problems, it's to spark real, measurable, collaborative solutions that reach beyond this room and into the world. So today, we are also streaming outside of these four walls on GBEF.com, Essence.com, and the Global Black Economic Forum's LinkedIn and YouTube pages. So take out your phones and text and email everybody back home. And I know it's a holiday, but we got work to do. In short, we are everywhere because we need everybody. All right, and so before I get started, I gotta do a little housekeeping. And I gotta thank our partners and our sponsors who made today and this weekend happen. This list is exhaustive, so I know these are some of your companies, but if we can hold our applause until the very end, I would greatly appreciate it. So we have Entergy, L'Oreal, Service Employees International Union, known as SCIU, the Xavier Ochsner College of Medicine, Gilead Sciences, Sister Song, Pfizer, Merck, Onyx Impact, Healthy Blue Louisiana, Vituity, Biogen, the National Minority Equality Forum, the Congressional Black Caucus PAC, Habitat for Humanity, the College Board, Delaware State at HBCU, Wells Fargo, Kidvestors, JP Morgan Health, American Psychiatric Association Foundation, the Global Black Economic Forum Academy for Advancing Excellence, New Orleans and Company, Kept Health, Illustrate Change, powered by the Association of Medical Illustrators, 15 White Coats, Quintess, and Omidyar. You can give it up now. Y'all listen, that's great. Also, I'd like to shout out our media partners, Essence, of course, National Grounds, the NOLA Collective, Native Land Pod, and US News and World Report. And of course, a special thank you to our event and creative producers, MVD Inc., for bringing today's vision to life. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Kat Graham, who is a UN ambassador, recording artist, and producer. Give it up for Kat.
How y'all doing? Oh, come on. This is the beginning of the Essence Festival. How y'all doing? Came all the way from Atlanta, y'all. It's not that far. Yay! Wow. So, such a city to bring us together, right? I mean, the energy here is so real. You feel it in the streets. You know, New Orleans doesn't perform resilience. It lives it. The city knows how to honor its roots while still pushing forward, and that's exactly the spirit of this moment. So it is really an honor to welcome you all to the 2025 Global Black Economic Forum. This isn't just a conference, though. Am I right? It's a call to action. It's a reminder that Black and marginalized communities can't be sidelines in conversations about wealth, growth, or innovation. We're not a trend. We are the future. We're here to talk strategy, real solutions, lasting power, generational change, and we are all here to do it together. I want to take a moment to introduce someone who's not just behind this vision, he is this vision. Someone who has led with fire and purpose long before anyone was watching. Someone who isn't just a global leader. He's family. Alphonso David. Alphonso is my cousin. No, not my real cousin, y'all. And we've all watched him fight for what's right for decades. In courtrooms, behind policy doors, and out in the open when it mattered most. He's gone head to head with institutions that weren't built for us and refused to back down. His work spans civil rights law, government leadership, and advocacy at the highest levels. And through it all, he stayed grounded in the belief that justice isn't just one thing, it is everything. Racial justice, economic justice, gender equity, queer liberation. It's all connected. If one thread moves, the whole thing shifts. You know, when Alphonso founded the Global Black Economic Forum, it wasn't to make noise, it was to build infrastructure, to create a space where power could be moved, grown, and shared, where leaders from every sector could come together and actually make change happen. This work isn't theoretical, it's personal. It matters to the young girl in Ghana dreaming of her first business, or to the Black entrepreneur in Atlanta or New Orleans, who just needs one yes, to the refugee child that I met in South Sudan who still believes in possibility even after losing everything. Bear with me, these cards are big and bold, y'all. So in my role with the United Nations Refugee Agency, I've seen what happens firsthand when people are locked out of opportunity. But I've also seen what's possible when someone bets on them. Changes everything. And that's what this forum is about. It's about building with each other, backing each other, creating a global network that doesn't ask for space, it owns it. We are not waiting for permission. We are building our own tables on our own terms. Am I right? Alphonso is proof of what's possible when vision meets work, when strategy meets soul, when someone chooses to challenge the way things have always been done and does it with clarity, strength, and purpose. So today, I'm asking y'all to lean all the way in, learn something, meet someone, use whatever platform you have, your voice, your company, your influence, to move something forward. Because no one is coming to save us. Because no one is coming to save us. We are the strategy. Do you understand? And with that, I know it's my cousin, so y'all gonna get to your feet now. It is my absolute honor to introduce the founder and CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum, a force, a thinker, a fighter, and my cousin. Please stand to your feet and welcome founder Alphonso David.
Thank you, Kat.
You're welcome.
I should have asked her for a copy of those remarks before. So thank you all for being here today. I am the president and the CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum. But before we begin, I do want to acknowledge Richelieu Dennis, who I have worked with for my entire life, but specifically since I've been at the Global Black Economic Forum. It was an idea that he had years ago about the importance of making sure that we create spaces for marginalized communities to create solutions that affect us directly. And that idea is now what is the Global Black Economic Forum. So a shout out to Richelieu Dennis. And I also want to thank you all for showing up. Showing up is not just simply being here and sitting in a seat. When you decide to attend the Global Black Economic Forum, you decide to engage in action. And I say to folks all the time, be afraid of fear, but be terrified of regret. And at this moment, both here in the United States and globally, we have to decide to take action. We have to decide to exercise our values. We can have our values and define them, but if we don't lean into our values, we may end up finding ourselves in a position where we lose them. And we cannot acquiesce. The Global Black Economic Forum is nonpartisan. We're not assigning labels to what we do. But what we do assign a label to is equality and equity for all. And we have to recognize that here in the US and globally, unfortunately, people of color and Black people are often marginalized, and they face obstacle after obstacle in every industry, in every segment of society. So our job is to figure out, what are the new solutions? How do we redefine equity in a way that's actually achievable and sustainable? Because as you've heard from Alencia, as you've heard from Kat, there is a large amount of regression we are confronting. And so we're not going to just sit back and see that happening. We're going to reimagine what the future looks like. The future of work, the future of wealth, the future of democracy, and the future of health. And we have done this work now for several years, and we don't do it alone. We have partners who we work with. And I'm going to now introduce 4 fantastic, incredible, smart, deliberate, strategic women who we have had the pleasure and the privilege to work with and continue to work with to think about, how do we materialize and realize the vision of the future of work, wealth, health, and democracy. So with that, I would like to first introduce Ty Boyea Robinson, who is the president and CEO of CapEQ. And she's also a board member of Freedom Economy. Next, Michellene Davis, who's the president and CEO of National Medical Fellowships. Next, Dr. Aletha Maybank, who's the president of, she has a fan club, of Novellawells. And finally, last but not least, Aaliyah Haqq, who's the Chief Operating Officer of GBEF's Academy for Advancing Excellence. Thank you all for joining us. As we do every year, we start the conversation with where we've been and where we're going. And so I want to start with you, Ty. We've had an opportunity to work together now for more than almost 2 years. Thinking about how do we address this challenge that we face, specifically here in the US, but is creeping outside of it, of defining and reimagining equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we have worked in philanthropic spaces, we have worked in corporate spaces, we have worked in government spaces, and what we're seeing, not only in the newspapers, but also in the court of public opinion sometimes, is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is dead. And can you just talk a little bit about the work that we've done so people can understand what it takes to sort of toe the line and hold the line and make sure that we are addressing misinformation and disinformation as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't know if we've given enough love to Alphonso David for how much leadership he has, and we have been so pleased to be able to partner with you and have a front row seat of your vision and your leadership. You know, at CapEQ, we work with 1,000 organizations over our close to 15-year period. If you think on just the investors alone, they've managed $3 trillion of assets under management and across multiple asset classes. And I share that because we have a privilege of being able to see what's happening across industries, across sectors. And one of the first things I want to compel everybody to do is to stop saying backlash. Because backlash is about a groundswell of people where enough is enough and this isn't working for them. These attacks are by a well-resourced group of people peddling propaganda. And I want you to know that diversity, equity, inclusion is not dead. I know firsthand because I see it in our partners. In fact, let's break it down by 3 ways. First, let's think about consumers. In my second book, The Social Impact Advantage, I shared how consumers are shifting to millennials who are more diverse and who also vote their pocketbooks by their values. you know, some of the people out there are really having an FAFO moment. Look it up if you don't know. Because if you look at Costco, who stood by its values, it had an increase by 7.7 million in foot traffic. But you look at Target, who was like, psych, we kind of like diversity. They have a 5.5 million decrease in foot traffic. So diversity, equity, inclusion is right for consumers. But what about investors? Investors are where all the money is, right? If you look at the shareholder proposals that were anti-DEI, they were an overwhelming trouncing. I want to say a mollywallop. Not one anti-DEI proposal made it across the finish line. In fact, they were overwhelmingly rejected by 98%. Overwhelmingly. So investors are about diversity, equity, inclusion. What about employees? When you see people like the CEO of Marriott, who was struggling with whether or not he should say, we stand for diversity, equity, inclusion, he stood firm and said, got 40,000 emails from his employees. That means employees care about it. So when you look at those results, that is not just for these limited cases. In fact, recently there's been a report and a survey. There were 750 business leaders surveyed. And you wanna know what? They're having some remorse, y'all. 2/3 of them said, we are having negative impacts from rolling back diversity, equity, inclusion. We are having low employee morale, we're having a hard time recruiting, people are boycotting us, and we're having all of these challenges. 1 in 7 say, maybe it was a mistake to roll back DEI. So if you look at the data, you look at the numbers, you look at the people, the results are in and DEI wins.
So, Ty just referenced something that I think I want to make sure doesn't get lost. 100% of shareholder proposals, anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion, shareholder proposals have failed. 100%. So that tells you that at every single large company, their shareholders are rejecting proposals that are looking to remove, eliminate, reduce diversity, equity, and inclusion and its impact. And that's incredibly important because that narrative is not being advanced in a way that it should. I want to shift to Michellene. When we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, we have to look at different industries. We look at medical professions specifically. We entered into a partnership last year because when we met, I was blown away when you told me the stats about doctors. And I want you to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing, why it's important, and why the folks in this room should care, right? Because you are working on making sure that our medical schools are diverse. And the folks in the room may not understand why that is relevant to their lives. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Alphonso. I literally completely echo my fellow panelists in acknowledging you for just your intentionality in this space and in every space where we are. So thank you for that. What I will tell you is the fact that we ushered in a discussion and a partnership around information pertaining to the physician shortage. And what's interesting about that is that most people don't think about the physician shortage at all. They don't think about the fact that the AAMC has forecast the fact that by 2036, this country is expected to be 186,000 short of physicians. What is interesting about that is that that estimate is woefully low. That estimate is woefully low as a result of the fact that it was based on a scenario that included immigrant physicians coming into this country. And for those of you who happen to know anything about that, you also know about the pause on the J-1 visa. And the fact that on July 1st, the 6,000 physicians that were expected to come into the country and begin to work in our hospitals and health systems and community clinics, et cetera, that they did not show up. So that number has already been exacerbated by the reality of the pause on J-1 visas, but it gets better than that. And it gets better than that because of where we are right now. And because right now there is a measure that is being considered, even as we speak, that would do more to exacerbate this incredible shortage. And if you tie that together with what we've already seen as a result of the SCOTUS decision on affirmative action, we've already seen a double-digit drop in the first year alone. Not a small decrease in the applicants of Black and Latino candidates, but quite frankly, right, by 10.2 and 11.8%. This is not a drop-off, this is a cliff-off. right? So if we take a look at that and then we compare it to what is already being talked about in the bill, we know that the cap that was in the House version, $150,000 per year for a federal loan, has now been increased to just $200,000, which you think, right, might be doable until you realize how very expensive a medical education is. And that for those that come from communities that have been historically made vulnerable, what we know for a fact is that when you come from communities where the household income varies between $35,000 to $45,000, that you are graduating up out of medical school with not $200,000 in debt, you're graduating upwards of $400,000 to $600,000 in debt. And so why would we be in this conversation? We would be in this conversation because I am from National Medical Fellowships, an organization that for the last 79 years has literally ensured the advancement of health equity by making certain that there are folks from these communities who are actually in medical school who make it through medical school, and our scholars are the best and the brightest. Dr. Maybank is a perfect example of that, right? So we began this conversation because oftentimes people don't think about a physician shortage, but I'll tell you this, when you go into your physician's office and you have to wait and you're slightly annoyed so you're on your phone, why do you think you're waiting? When you call to get your child in to see that allergy specialist, right? And you're upset because he told you a date that is 2026. When you're concerned about your mother, like I am, who has advanced Alzheimer's and needs a ton of specialists in order to make certain that she is healthy and well, and I called in February and they told me October 28th. When I called my primary for my annual, and they say, we'll see you February the 12th of 2026. So why is it important and relevant to this particular community? Because of what you all know. Because you know that when everyone else catches a cold, we already have the flu, right? Listen, COVID was the world's pandemic, but we had already had one. We had seen it as a result of the fact that so many offices, because folks oftentimes do not think about the fact that the neighborhood physician's practice is an entrepreneurship venture too. And so when we skip them, we skip the health and well-being of our community by and large when they have to be acquired by some large entity and be relocated to a community that is outside of ours, right? So it is important that you pay attention to this, because even if you are a young invincible, my love, you are going to need health care. Because the numbers of black physicians is still only 5.1%. Yeah, exactly that part. And what we're seeing is every measure in order to get that number to go down. And so, listen, all we do is make certain that everybody, no matter where they come from, has an opportunity to fulfill the dream of going back and returning to their communities and making certain that everybody has a chance to grow up healthy and strong.
I didn't know we were going to church this morning.
Wow.
Yeah, Kat started, and then, okay, I know where we are. Aaliyah, I want to turn to you for a minute. I have the privilege of working with you every single day, and your vision and your brilliance and your tenacity, just to constantly look at a problem through different lenses is impressive. What I would like for you to just communicate to this group is where we are in this country on leadership development. Because you focus on leadership development. You look at CEOs, you look at the C-suite, you look at an entire workforce to think about how do you level up? How do you think about getting to that next place? And in this current political and cultural moment that we find ourselves, what does the future look like for leadership development?
Thank you for that, Alphonso, and really excited to be here today. As I was preparing, I was like, this time of year is kind of like Christmas, so really wonderful to see all these beautiful faces. As Alphonso mentioned, we work together every day, and I run the leadership development part of the Global Black Economic Forum. And we're seeing so many different aspects of leadership development come online, and some kind of back away a little bit, or people are a little less interested in some things. I will say that something I'm noticing from a global perspective is we have a lot of people who want to be in power, but very few people who want to lead. And we need people who are willing to step up and lead, okay? I find that when I talk to, we work with Fortune 500 companies really legitimately across the globe. And what I notice is that women tend to be more willing to lean into leadership than men do. No shade at all It's just the empirical, just a little bit of data, and there's some some articles and some other data to prove that. But we need people to step up and to lead. We're noticing that leaders also need to be more well-versed in geopolitical issues, because we truly do see how we are connected from a global perspective. So it's important that leaders are, mindful of the, dozens of conflicts that are going on throughout the world, that they understand that when a natural disaster happens in another part of the world, how that could impact their supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. We're also noticing that some people are afraid of AI. And what we don't pay attention to is that AI has been a part of what we do for decades. So if you are not utilizing AI as a leader to help level up your leadership, even if it's to help you write performance reviews, if it's to think about how you talk about yourself with your value proposition, et cetera, it's important that we are embracing AI however we can. It's a wonderful way to shortcut different aspects of what you do, but it's very, very important that we're embracing technology, because it will leave us behind if we're not embracing it. Something else that's very important is to really pay attention to neurodiversity in your organizations, in your enterprises. We have people who are entering the workplace who may not be people, because if you think about some of the people who are entering the workplace, they may have been graduating from college during COVID. They could have had their first work experience during COVID, and they may not have had those kind of typical office interactions that some of us are used to. So we've got to pay attention to that as well. And something else that's very important for leaders and leadership development initiatives to pay attention to are the multiple generations in the workplace. It is incredible. We have a very diverse team. We have people from all generations working with us, and it is amazing how important it is that we have to check in and say, okay, and I'm going to mess with Alphonso for a minute. Technology. He's like, he'll be on a call and say, I don't know how to do that. So we are working to bring everyone along in this brilliance. He is brilliant. Let me be very clear. But it's important because, and just a quick little behind the curtains as well, when he embraces technology, he's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So for all of us who may not be embracing technology, there's benefit on the other side. So those are 4 quick bullets of what leaders really need to be doing right now. And I want to just jump on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because 2 years ago, I was on a panel that talked about putting the E in ESG, and how, putting the S in ESG, and how important it was to look at diversity, because so many people were trying to tuck it under corporate social responsibility. And what we said on that panel was that some people are predicting that in 18 months it could be gone, and here we are. And what I think is so important is that diversity, equity, and inclusion in the iteration that we're kind of familiar with, or that's been popularized, was really a bolt-on. And what's so dangerous about bolting something on is when you bolt it on, you can easily bolt it off. And that's what we've seen. So when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not a nice to have, it has to be how you do business. It has to be interwoven into your business practices, into how you source your suppliers, into how you hire, how you think about your consumers, because it helps to drive business. It is a business imperative. I'm a leadership development person for 20 years, and I love this work because I know that it feels good. But I also love this work because I know how it can impact business. And that's what we have to have the conversation about. We have to point diversity, equity, inclusion towards the business benefits. And I think Ty did such an amazing job of really going through those 3 bullets, because it is absolutely critical that we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and how can it drive better business results.
Thank you, Aaliyah. So this is our introductory panel. You'll hear from folks today on artificial intelligence, about the future of health. You'll hear from the governor of Illinois. You'll hear from 2 ambassadors who are come in from Tanzania and from Kenya. We will be unpacking what the future looks like on everything from artificial intelligence to venture capitalism. But one of the areas that we have been focused on, and I know that we don't have that much time, but I'm gonna give you some time to really outline this, is the future of health. And when we met, we started talking and the light bulb went off. This idea that our health is connected to everything else. If you are not healthy, you can't really work. If you're not really healthy, you can't really think about generational wealth. And you certainly can't think about civic engagement. So the importance of centering so much of our work through the lens of health is how we have now partnered for almost a year. And thinking about how do we bring this future of work, wealth, democracy alive through the lens of the future of health. I want you to talk a little bit about what that means for you personally and what it means for so many of the folks in this room, because we have a lot of health professionals who are here, who do this work day in and day out, and what the vision is for the future of health.
Thank you. Thank you, Alphonso, and thank you on several levels. So Aletha Maybank, I'm a physician by training. I don't practice much at all anymore, really. But I'm also a recovering equity officer, is what I say at this point in time. I worked in institutions my entire career, doing startups, launching centers within the context of institutions to advance equity within the institution. So DEI is one part of it, the workforce piece of it, but most of you and many of you are in health, no, that's just one piece of it, right? The ability to work towards achieving health equity is a whole nother body of work. And so that's where I've built my space. I resigned from my institution that I was at previously. I was exhausted. I was tired, as several of you folks I know are in this room as well, leading this work for so long, to the point where it was impacting my own personal health. And I didn't feel I was at the point of being able to survive, truthfully, at some points. And what I realized as I stepped out of the institution, I had this sense as I was starting to leave, is this context of, well, if our institutions aren't providing it in the way that we need to, we're not able as leaders to organize, to deliver strategy in the ways that we were hired to do, then what do we do? And it's not anything new, right? This is what we've always done, and it's what has already been mentioned, kind of the forest with us by us. And so in my context, I felt it was really important because of the relationship that we developed for me to work in a space. Now, you're an institution per se, but it's a cultural institution at one point, right? It's a think tank at another level. And then you have this intersection of health, work, democracy, and wealth, which is very unique, right? And from my perspective as a person who's been in public health, I'm a health in all policies believer. Every single policy that is passed and delivered has health impacts. And we can actually measure it, but we're not a society that even knows that, understands that, or values that. And so being able to kind of build and launch some context to that at the beginning point is very attractive and I think very needed at this time. The narrative of health within our society is very narrow. What are the aspects of, the doctor shows that you see on TV? They're always in ERs, never anything else. That's how we experience health. But we're in this current backdrop. And it's very clear that we need to operate outside of our silos that we typically do, even within the health ecosystem. And we need to be able to plan and build together in greater solidarity. And I feel these environments that are Black-rooted, historically Black, allow us to do that better, and that's the hope and the vision for it. So we've brought many health leaders from all across the country, even the world, to be here for this weekend. We have health embedded in many conversations throughout the weekend, and we also have experiences so that our attendees can kind of touch health a little bit differently as they are thinking about it, imagining about health within themselves and as well as for their communities. So this is the start. I thank you. I really do thank you for being courageous enough, trusting enough that we don't know each other that well, but we know each other well enough, we've heard of each other well enough, to know that we could build something that I think is going to be extremely meaningful for a long time to come.
Thank you. So as we come to a close, I'm going to ask for a lightning round. You have leaders that are watching this all over the world. Folks are watching it on YouTube. Folks are watching it on LinkedIn. on essence.com, on GBEF.com. Last year, we had more than 4 million people watch our content. As leaders are thinking about what you all have said, when they make decisions every single day, what do you want to leave them with? What is the message to them in this room and to the folks that are watching that you believe is key and essential to how we reimagine our current environment and how we imagine a future that is inclusive? I think Ty is ready to go. So Ty, we're gonna start with you. Go to Michellene, Aletha, and Aaliyah, and then we'll take a picture and we'll skadoodle off stage.
Absolutely. So I think it's really disheartening that the data is not keeping up with the narrative. So one of the things that's really critical is for people to step back and see these attacks, people are thinking about them as partisan. You don't have to be partisan to be principled. So if you pull back and you just ignore the noise about DEI attacks, this is actually an attack on free enterprise. Your right to invest the way that you want to, your right to run a business within the law. And so what I'm encouraging everybody to do is to reclaim our freedoms. We've launched a campaign called the Freedom To campaign. I have the freedom to lead with values. I have the freedom to invest in Black communities. And I want everyone to start with reclaiming that narrative and sharing your stories by going to bit.ly/thefreedom2. This is just one step in reminding ourselves that we have the power, the influence, the numbers, and now we just need to back it up with the voice and the strength of leadership.
Michellene.
So I would say this. I would look to the leader in order to ensure that they understood this reality. That yes, it is true. We are all we have. The good news is that we are all we need. If we are conscientious about doing things together in the exact way in which, quite frankly, a culture has actually tried to teach us to be the opposite about. When we remember the fact that actually our cultural background is one of community. When we acknowledge the fact that we can get in front of this physician shortage if in fact we bond together, if in fact we realize that the attack that's right now on business is an investment, it's also on the nonprofit community. And if we decide that I'm going to be the answer to that partnership, I would say to them to please understand that we need each other right now. That the time for I'll think about it is long gone. Right? That ship has sailed. And as a result of that, in order to make certain that we are all paddling in the right direction, I'm going to need for them to acknowledge that they have to come to the forefront and take up arms outside of just their particular industry to partner with those that are lifting the communities, getting ahead of the issues, and deciding that I'm going to be an element of that solution. We are all we have, but I promise you we are all we need.
Exactly. Do you want?
No, right after the clergy, certainly.
Yeah. Okay. I know, right? Right. This is for. I'm going to speak specifically very much to health leaders, but it's building on that context that we are enough. I think many of us go through our spaces and think we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we're running. And I want us to know and lead and teach the others that are with us in terms of a leadership development point that they are enough too. And so that when we want to step out and we want to build, we have everything that we need in order to build what we want to build. And I think also to that context is to also push our own selves to venture and to partner with entities that you wouldn't typically partner with. And I'm a very big person on culture, whether it's arts, whether it's communication, whatever it is, because that's where people are. And that's where people pay attention to. And so we need to build that savviness, those relationships with culture, art, all these places so that we can actually impart our messages there, because we have so many gaps right now, so many gaps. And we need to go where people are, and we need to help build that space.
Aaliyah.
So our job as leaders, as I see it, is to bring out the best in people, period. That's your job as a leader. I think it's really important when we have the opportunity to sponsor someone that we do that. that we don't just look at the next generation and say, ooh, why are they looking like that? Why does their hair look like that? Why didn't they do blah, blah, blah like XYZ? Because they don't know. Statistically, Black folks are under-sponsored and over-mentored. We have got to help people. We have to help the next generation rise, and we have got to bring out the best in our teams.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. First, for partnering with us, continuing to partner with us. And what I want to say is they exemplify what I hope we can continue to expand. For the folks who are watching, for the folks in the room, if you haven't partnered with us, there are a variety of ways to do it. And we want to encourage you to do so because, as Aletha and I have talked about many times, the pie is much larger than you can actually see. Thank you so much.